Hey guys, how you doing? jpsarrireviews here, and welcome to another episode of Age of Heroes, my podcast for those who are watching this on YouTube, and for those who are listening through the different platforms, welcome and thank you for taking the time. Now, let me ask you this. What is nostalgia? Is nostalgia important for us as geeks, as supporters of pop culture for any franchise? Is it good as people involved in different hobbies? Is it good for us? Is it good for gaming? Is it good for collectibles? Is it good for movies? Is it good for anything? Well, in this episode, I really want to explore that. I want to explore the question, and I want to really find the answer, or at least try to find an opinion or share my opinion in regards to it, because I think that there's a lot in it that definitely needs some answers. So we will discuss that today. So the reason why I'm asking is because in recent, I would say for a while, recent months perhaps, but it's always something that I've been thinking for a while, like probably years. And, you know, I really want to know. I really want to really find the answer to this, because I think we all have the question. You know, we all understand what nostalgia is. And if we don't understand that, well, we can go to the dictionary and we can actually find at least the description of it, and we can determine that. We need to determine that first. So if I go to the dictionary, you can. There's many ways you can Google it, and when you Google it, there's so many different, I would say, interpretations and meanings of it, but they're all kind of the same. But I'm gonna read three of them that I find myself, that I feel that they kind of encompass the meaning of the reasoning behind the word nostalgia. And the first one, I would use the Oxford University Dictionary. They have this. It's a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, typically for a period or place with happy personal associations. Well, that's a really nice way to express what nostalgia is all about. But that's not the only place I want to use. We can also use the Cambridge Dictionary. And it has almost the same thing, but it's a bit different. It says a feeling of pleasure and sometimes slight sadness at the same time as you think about things that happened in the past. So here, it's not only talking about I would say the emotional ecstasies that comes with thinking about those things that we associate of happy moments, I would say, from the past, of our childhood. It's also talked about a little bit of sadness and longing. And, you know, I would say regret that we don't see those things anymore. And finally, I'm going to use a Merriam-Webster, which is a very common dictionary, very easy to find. But this one, it says, describing the definition of nostalgia versus the state of being homesick. So also, when we're homesick, we also express nostalgia, but also it says the second part is a wistful, same as the others, or excessively sentimental yearning for return to or of some past period of irrecoverable condition. So we want to go back to something that we will never be able to achieve. So these are definitely interesting definitions when you come to think of them. One is saying, well, is this longing for things of the past? And the second one is talking, in this case, Cambridge is saying that it's also accompanied by some sense of sadness that we don't have that anymore. And the third one, it's talking about that we are longing, this wistful sentiment for something that, for a time or a period, but something that is, you know, a situation that is never going to happen again. That's what the word means, that you cannot recover anymore. So all these different expressions that really define what nostalgia is, and of course this podcast is not linguistic. We're not trying to be linguistic about or separate the meaning of words or anything like that. But the reason why I'm asking the question, and the reason why I want to find the answer, at least for, you know, to express that, you know, because I have thought about it for so long, is the reason that sometimes as people, of course we all as people, we associate some things. So the things we do are associated with things of the past. For example, I'm going to use myself as an example. This channel, everything I do is definitely it's a representation of me. And here, of course, I talk about comic books. I talk about collectibles that are always associated with comic books, so things of pop culture, toy lines, cartoons, movies. I talk about things that most of those things that I do nowadays are a reflection of my upbringing, of course. these are reflections of things that I love, passions that I have. As a kid, I read so many comic books. I'm a big fan of anything that is comic book related. The movies that I love, I enjoy the most are related to that. So the collectibles, the things that I collect, toys, statues, all of that are related to characters that I grew up. As many of you know, I'm a big Marvel fan. I think I'm a bigger Marvel fan than a DC fan, although I'm a DC fan as well. So I collect those things that actually bring those memories of my childhood, of good times growing up, reading comics. Remember as a child reading the comics at home, watching those 80s cartoons and 70s cartoons and all those wonderful cartoons of the past, and remembering good times and thinking about those dates of the back in the day in the arcades, where I used to go to the arcades and play arcades and all these great games. And now, of course, when we come to think of things nowadays, things have changed and everything is different. Comic books, the only way to get comics was going and buying physically. Nowadays you can read them digitally. Movies, we didn't get too many movies a year, but those movies were, we talk about them for forever, like Star Wars, they had it in the theater for years. It was there, we were watching it over and over and over, and we never got tired of it. And nowadays, there's a new movie every week, the amount of new movies and releases and stuff and reboots and all that kind of stuff. And of course, the movies are, they have more CGI, more special effects. There's a lot of money invested on it. So technically, from a technical standpoint, are better than before. Cartoons, back in the day, we loved those cartoons. We watch them over and over, the same episodes time and time and time again. Nowadays, of course, we have moved from cartoons. Cartoons are still there. There's cartoons, but people are moving into other things of entertainment, like gaming. Gaming was totally different back in the day. You remember playing Atari and all those things. We were so entertained playing the same levels over and over and trying to finish it because they were so hard as nails. But nowadays, it's like the games have become this world where you interact with people, in vast arenas where you can do so many things. It's such a wonderful world. There's so many different worlds, so many different communities playing different games, whether it's RPGs, whether it's personal shooters, or whether there's anything, first person shooters, or any other type of community. People are so involved in some different communities. You can interact with people. So definitely we live in better times if you come to think of it from a technical standpoint, from technology, from the point of technology. Yes, times are better. There's more stuff than ever before. There's more entertainment than ever before. There's more access to things than ever before. I've always made these comparisons about the past. I think the past was better, but also I see it from my perspective of a person that associate those moments with happy times. As a kid, when in reality there was not much to worry about. There was no sense that I need to do this or to do that. I don't really have bills to pay. I don't have to worry about, putting kids through college. I don't have to worry about, paying a mortgage. I don't have to worry about all those things that now are part of my life as an adult. And as an adults, we have that. We have to work. We have to, provide for our families. We have insurances to pay. We have to think about retirement. So all of those things, as a kid, you didn't have to think about none of those things. So of course, you worry only about the things that really matter. Yes, you went to school. Yes, you did all the things kids did, but at the end of the day, your entertainment was kind of like this little world, and you used to associate those things. Associate comics with my father. There's one that introduced me to them, and spending some good time reading comics and enjoying those shows. I associate all those things, the toy lines, collecting the toys, Masters of the Universe, Transformers, G.I. Joes, all of them, to those moments playing with my brother, spending time with my friends, talking about him. I associate video games when the time I spend with a friend's house or my cousin's house playing Mario or Atari, and playing all these little games, staying there for hours watching, going to the arcades and eating pizza and all that kind of stuff. So all of those things we associate. And of course, those are our memories, our golden days. And, I've go through so many groups. I'm a member of so many different groups, whether it's comics, whether there is, gaming, whether there is whatever. And most of them, they have a nostalgic feel. And people always talk about nostalgia. And that's something that we share and we express. And the reason why I collect statues, because it brings those memories. That's expression, those, figures, the statues, the poses, all of that. I remember these characters growing up and how impactful they were to my life. So definitely those are things that are really important. However, I feel that sometimes nostalgia outweighs so much of the reality of things that we don't see the bad, and we also everything is good. We don't see the flaws of things. So when we try to compare things to the present, of course, nostalgia wins, and we always say, well, the things in the past were better than the things now. Star Wars was better back in the day. The original trilogy was a masterpiece. That's what we say, and this trilogy is just sucks. It's bad. It's terrible. We think about Transformers, back growing up, the cartoons, and now we think, well, Transformers now, they're terrible. The Michael Bay movies are terrible. And, there's a degree of it. I'm not going to say that they're not all masterpieces today, but when we are not, I would say, as objective to it, because we are looking at things through the prism of the past, through the prism of nostalgia. And that becomes our lens. Well, we see the world through those lenses about what is comfortable for us. Kind of like comfort food. You grew up eating certain things. You're always going to go back to those things that you grew up eating because it brings memories of you at home with your mom or with your dad, where he took you out to eat this particular hamburger joint, and you used to eat these little hamburgers. And when you go back to eat them years later, you realize they were not that great. Well, things change, of course. Cooks change. There's different cooks, different methods of cooking. Even the restaurant chains, they kind of change the way they do their recipes. But at the end of the day, it's still the same product, but we see things in a different light. Of course, now as we get older, we can be more, if we are open-minded, we can see things for what they really were, and also their flaws. And it's something that happens everywhere. And I see it all the time, and in every single aspect of my life. And as we get older, I think we become more stoic and more, I would say, close-minded about things. We see the world in a one way. We don't want to change that because that's what we have done for many, many years. And we just stuck in the same circle and the same mindset, and we don't want to change our ways. I remember as a teenager, I was like always fighting I was a teenager that was rebellious. I wanted to fight the world. Everything I wanted, just, I question everything. But as I get older, as you start growing up and living life and going through all of that, you realize that, being rebellious in life or always challenging everything doesn't mean that everything is going to work that way or it's going to give any type of pleasure. Sometimes you have to align yourself with the system. And honestly, it is hard for, when you're young to accept that. But once you get older, you realize that actually life is a simple matter. It's simple. It's about finding happiness sometimes in the simple things. But the same happens, I would say, with entertainment in the sense that we want things to remain one way. But there's no growth in our lives if we're not willing to accept that not everything was perfect in the past. Not everything that we enjoy in the past was perfect. Not all the comic artists that we love were actually good comic artists, or they also have flaws and they also have limitations. That a 9-year-old or 7-year-old or 12-year-old, 15-year-old vision of the world is totally different from the vision of somebody in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s and their 50s and so on. Our life changes, our vision of things changes over time because we see things in a new perspective. However, that only depends a lot also if we are willing to accept that, and we are willing to grow in the process and actually see the things for what they are and enjoy things for what they truly are. Like, for example, I'm going to use example with Star Wars. I've been reviewing stuff for Star Wars. If you haven't watched my channel, you don't follow the channel on YouTube, I invite you to do it. This last week over the weekend, I review The Rise of Skywalker, which I think is a fantastic film. I also review The Mandalorian. I have no problems with the Star Wars universe, the new trilogy. I have no problems. Yes, it's not perfect. But if I go back and I review, I would say, in the original trilogy, which to me is the standard of Star Wars, what really cemented everything, which I'm always going to, for me, the nostalgia part of it, my nostalgic view is going to embrace those movies as the best and as the standard. But when I come to think of it from an objective point of view, I realize they weren't perfect. They had limitations. They were not the best thing ever. They were, for the time, at least they were something different and new, and we enjoy them so much, and we watch them over and over and over, and it was a cathartic experience just to watch them and, to collect the toys, and even read those comics back in the day, the old comics, all of that. It was an experience. that it took everything by storm, and it was good. But of course, everything has to evolve. Of course, nowadays we also had the prequels, which I was not really a big fan. I was younger, and I never really considered them as good. I was younger. Now I can see them in a better light, and I see the pluses on them and also the negatives, but I can appreciate them more than I did when I watched them the first time. So now that I'm older, a lot older with this new trilogy, of course, now I see things even more with more maturity, and I can say that they're not bad. This is the thing. If I go to the movie theater, I don't go just to judge things out. I'm trying to figure it out, in a snobby type of way, what is best, and trying to find out what is the problem that I'm not going to be able to fix. The movies are made the way they are, and I just have to enjoy them. But also to see the good, not saying that they're perfect, but have enjoy every film. But of course, I see that a lot of people are throwing a lot of, shame and hate and shade and all that kind of stuff online because they don't like him and they feel they need to express their opinion, of course, on the I would say the banner of free expression and free speech. But bottom line is that there is no, I would say, there's no concise, I would say, opinion. There's no something that encompasses everyone, particularly in a franchise like Star Wars. People are going to see things differently in so many different ways. The same, and I'm using that as an example, because I feel that sometimes people, in getting into this discussion, arguments with people, some people see things with nostalgia and they just want to do that. And the nostalgia can go back not only for the people that saw the original. I've seen this a lot. People that not only that watch the originals are embracing that as the only thing Star Wars, but also people that have grown, which are a lot younger, in their, I would say, 20s. They grew up with in this case, watching as kids the prequels. Now they're embracing them as the best thing that ever happened to Star Wars. To them, that was their thing. And they're the ones that are more vocal. Now, I would say a lot of these millennials are more vocal about the new Star Wars trilogy more than anyone else. And they're the ones actually, like the ones that they're going online and they just typing all like keyboard warriors. They're typing what they hate this or we hate that. But I've seen a lot of people probably my age, older than I, people that actually grew up watching the originals. They're more actually open to say, what, it wasn't bad, it wasn't perfect, but it's not bad, because you get to a point in life where you say, what, do I want to live on nostalgia alone, or do I want to move on? Do I want to embrace the new? And the same happens with comics. I member so many different groups with comics, and particularly old comics and old artists and all that stuff. And I love those. I love the art. And I do see all the time people always criticizing comics or modern comics, always talking about that new comics are better, older comics are better than newer comics. And this is subjective because it's just based on our perception. And yeah, we can justify it, but you try to discuss that from your perspective of nostalgia, and that really, it's not good. Yes, those were what cemented comics, what really set the stage for what comics are. But also there was a lot of, I would say, during that time, during the 70s, during the 60s, 70s, so in the 80s, there was a lot of filler and a lot of stuff that actually wasn't good. They try new things. In different some genres in comics, and a lot of things wasn't that great. And when people say, well, comics now are horrible today, but they're referring perhaps to what they consider the only thing important, which is, people that grew up only reading comics back in the day of Captain America or Spider-Man. So when they compare that to the newer Spider-Man stories, they're going to say, well, those are the worst comics that ever happened in the world. And I've talked about it, that it's the worst thing that ever happened. But I have talked about it in this channel many times before, in this podcast, that actually nowadays there's a lot of new stories. There's a lot of good, comic book stories for all different genres and all different things. There are more comic book creators now than there ever was. There are more than just simply Marvel or DC. Now we have, independent stuff, not necessarily anything that has to do, with IDW or Dark Horse Comics, or anything that has to do with Image Comics. There's so many other publishers, small publishers, indie publishers, and there's a lot of people that are doing a lot of web comics and actually printing their own comics. Now we have more access in America of manga, something that we never had before. So there's a lot of places where you can find new stories, new and fresh things, and this is good. So when people are saying, well, comics are dying, they're looking at it from the perspective of nostalgia. Yes, perhaps the genre that we grew up reading back in the day, the superhero genre, the way it was created or the way it was set up during that time is dying, but it's also evolving into something totally new and different. The same with games. Games have evolved to a point that, now games, there's a big retro community of gaming people that love the retro stuff. I love retro. I love retro a lot. I play a lot of retro stuff. I don't really stream it here, but I play it by myself. I love to play a lot of the older games or platform games, all of that, the classics. But if I come to think of it, now these new games that we have nowadays, they are experiences in themselves. And they're encompassing us so much, and they give us so much new things. There's a lot of great shows. Yes, I grew up watching some of the older shows, and I love those older shows, 70s, 80s shows on TV. But there's new stuff that is also coming through different platforms. So there's new things. Now, the reason of this podcast today, and I'm coming now to the end of it, and I want to share this. This is what I want to share. To be honest with you, I don't think nostalgia is bad. But I do believe that there's the danger of being stuck with it, to the point that all you see is that, and you don't see opportunities for more adventures and for growth. I do believe that all of us, as long as we are on this earth, we're growing and we're maturing, and we are coming to different aspects of life that we never expected before. And, if we come to the place where we say we just content with the status quo, then we're never going to be able to enjoy life for more than what it is. And no matter how many hobbies you can have many hobbies, but none of those hobbies are going to bring full satisfaction to your life because you're stuck in the same circle and the same mindset, and you're going in circles over and over, like chasing your tail, like a dog is chasing its tail. That's how we are sometimes in life. And sometimes we have to be willing to accept things and be open to things. Like if I'm going to embrace this new Star Wars, I embrace Star Wars. I embrace Star Wars for what it is, in the good and the bad. There are good things, there are bad things. I'm going to express my disapproval for the things that I don't like, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to just be so close-minded. I'm going to just be grumpy about it and just be an hermit and, stay away from it, because the life is going to change. There's going to be stories. I need to be willing to accept that and read the comics for what they are. I read the old comics. I love my old comics, but also from time to time, I just venture into newer comics. I venture into newer shows, TV shows that I want to watch. I venture just in the idea. I'm open just to say, what? I'm willing, I'm expecting, I'm just coming with no expectations, with no preconceived notions. I'm coming just to enjoy the moment. And you know what? That's what I did with in this case, The Rise of Skywalker. I did not come to the movie theater with preconceived notions or try not to bring my nostalgia, in this case, jacket and says, this is what I am. This is what it needs to be. It needs to please me. No, I just came open, said I just came to enjoy the time, to have a good time. And you know what? I was pleased about it. I loved it. It was great. It wasn't perfect, and it didn't have to be. Nothing in this life is perfect. The only thing is perfect. The only perfect thing in this life is God. That's bottom line. God is perfect, and that's the reason he is God. Beyond that, nothing will be perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. No one is perfect. So nothing that is done is perfect. Even the artists, even the statues, even the comic book stories, all of that is going to have flaws, and that's fine. That's actually the beauty of being human. That's the beauty of the world we're living in. So my invitation to you is, through this podcast this week, is to be open to something new. Try something new. I think that's what really makes the difference. If you're willing not just to, you're willing to compromise something. Not saying compromise your beliefs, but compromise in some areas, in areas that, don't really need to be, actually, you don't need to be uptight about it. Actually, you will find something. You will find precious gems in the middle of the stones, in the middle of the rocks, in the middle of the desert. You'll find oases of happiness and joy. So be open to that opportunity, and definitely you will find it. And you know what? It has taken me years to really come to that realization myself, because, I have lived my life very uptight about a lot of things, and, come to the realization that, life is more than that, and life is precious, it's short, so might as well just enjoy it for what it is, and, not to let it just engulf me to the point that I'm just losing grip of reality, to the point that all I see is just my tiny little world in this tiny little box, and I'm not open for newer things. I just want 2020 to be a year that is totally different than 2019 was, or the past 41, 42 years of my life has been. But that's just my opinion. What is yours? Let me know. If you're watching this in YouTube, leave those comments below. I would like to have this conversation with you. If you're listening to the podcast through different platforms, and you can come to Facebook, you can come to Twitter. The links are down below. Follow me there, and just let me know how you feel about it. And let me know what you think about this podcast. Is this podcast something that you enjoy? It's something that is building you up as a person, that is giving you ideas, or having fun conversation. Definitely, I would like to hear your voice. I would like to hear your opinion. So my friends, God bless. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you again. Bye-bye.